I'm always thinking about strong words whenever there's a passage where the meaning of the passage is important. So vocab is included in that. So let's take a look. As a postdoctoral researcher in paleobotany, Dr. Elena Vasquez contributed to an extensive investigation that, despite initial resistance from senior colleagues who had long endorsed traditional interpretations, ultimately contradicted the prevailing assumption that ancient forest systems during the Cretaceous period were blank. Okay, I'm going to be honest, I barely understood the sentence, but I understood that there were strong words, right? Despite traditional interpretations, maybe even just the word contradicted, right? I get the sense that this question is going to come down to understanding those kinds of double negatives and how they relate to the blank, and that there's a potential trap here where I might understand the passage as a whole, but if I don't understand how the blank relates to the passage, how the double negatives might be affecting things, I might get it wrong anyway. So I'm not going to worry about sorting that out now. I don't know what we're saying about the Cretaceous. I need to read the next sentence, but already the strong words have popped out in my head, and I know that they're going to matter when I start to analyze this later. So that's what we're doing when we look for strong words as we read. It's just what words do I need to focus on later when I need to really figure this thing out. So second sentence. The research team's analysis of fossilized pollen samples and leaf impressions from multiple excavation sites revealed that these prehistoric environments actually sustained increased food webs with intricate food webs with numerous interdependent plant and animal species. So actually is kind of like a but. So it's kind of saying that what we used to think is actually something else, so there's kind of that little flip there. And in terms of what words in that second sentence matter, I don't really care if fossilized pollen samples, leaf impressions. It's not about that. Right? That's just the example. What do they say about the example? Well, they say there's intricate food webs with interdependent plant and animal species. Not only are these both strong words, but they basically mean the same thing. So I'm going to go with intricate because it's a simpler word. But that's kind of the idea, is this person found that things were intricate. Now, does that mean that that's the word in the blank? I don't know yet, because again, there were those strong words that I was reading earlier in the sentence that are flipping things around. I got to be really careful, right? So Elena Vasquez, right? What did she find? She found that they're intricate. So how does that relate to the blank? Let's really think about this. So contribute to an extensive investigation that despite initial resistance from senior colleagues who had long endorsed traditional interpretations. So this is suggesting that the traditional interpretation is that they're not intricate, okay? Ultimately contradicted, here we go, the prevailing assumption, that's the traditional interpretation, that ancient forest ecosystems during the Cretaceous were blank. Okay, so if Vasquez thinks they're intricate, and she's contradicting the prevailing assumption, what is she contradicting? She's contradicting that they were simple, right? Not intricate. So notice what they did there, right? Is I understand what this passage is saying. It's saying these things are intricate, right? But the blank is actually saying the opposite because the passage is doing this kind of annoying flip-flop thing. And that is a very common way that the SAT increases the difficulty of a question. Because now it's not just about do you know the vocabulary words, it's do you understand the logic of the passage. So strong words, I'm always thinking about words that adjust or flip the logic of the passage. And this is why I like to often say that the most important word in any passage is but. Contradict, that's a but. So it mattered here. So let's see, let's look at our choices. Obsolete, does that mean simple? No. Obsolete means something is kind of expired. Right? We often talk about technology as being obsolete, right? A payphone or a landline, that's kind of an obsolete technology because we all have cell phones now. So we all have a cell phone in our pocket. You don't need a phone with a cord. So obsolete payphones. So this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Rudimentary means simple or basic, right? Not complex. So that seems pretty good. Temperate means kind of like moderate, or just kind of make it maybe a little bit more how you guys would say it. It's not extreme. So in terms of temperature, which is I guess what we're going here because we're talking about an ecosystem, it would be temperate, meaning it's not too hot, not too cold. But we're just not talking about that. And plus, does that mean simple? No, it's its own kind of thing. And there we go. There's our trap, right? Complex, you should know what that means. It means intricate. And so again, the SAT knows that we have two places where we could have trouble. We could have trouble with the words themselves and the choices, not know what rudimentary means. I'll admit that is a slightly harder word. It's one that every high school student should know, in my opinion. So you got to know it. But it is not one that most students are going to use on a daily basis. And so, you might not know those words, and that might be the problem. But even if not, you should at least be able to eliminate D if you understand the logic of this passage, which is its own little puzzle that we need to solve. And the strong words really, really help. But I do think what a lot of people are going to do is they are going to be kind of confused about the logic of the passage. And they're not really going to try to untwist that logic because they see a word like complex that they know. They see a word like intricate that they know. They're like, oh yeah, those are good. And they just don't really bother to solve the puzzle beyond that. They just kind of trust that those words match up. And sometimes they will. Sometimes these vocab questions won't flip the meaning around in all sorts of weird ways. So sometimes it is that easy. But you've got to be able to, as you're reading for the very first time, sense danger. And words like despite, contradict, they really alert me to potential problems. I don't try to solve those problems right away because I don't have all the information I need to solve them, but I know I'm going to need to deal with that later. And that's, again, another benefit of strong words is things like that need to stand out so that you see the trap coming and you're able to prepare for it and avoid it.